Hello, and thank you for joining today's Family Office Network's webinar series featuring core advisors. Speaking for us today is Terry Judge, founder and partner. Terry has been in the business for over 15 years and has helped his clients save over $1.5 billion in the areas of commercial real estate investing, manufacturing innovation, and green building. At the end of today's presentation, we will have time for Q&A. We encourage your questions, so please use your questions chat option on your screen to send over any questions you have so we can answer them accordingly. And with that said, Terry, I'm going to let you take it from here.
All right, well, thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time out of their day to join this presentation. I want to keep this fairly light but informative. And so, like Lindsay said, my name is Terry Judge. I'm the founder and CEO of Core Advisors. We're out of the Detroit market, but we are nationwide. And I want to get into a little bit about who we are so you have an understanding and a little background. And then I'm going to get into the meat of the presentation today. But basically, we are a specialty tax and engineering firm. We've got a very unique staff made up of legal, tax professionals and engineering professionals, and we're doing projects, like I said, all over the country. And I apologize, I have a little bit of a cough and a little bit of a sniffles, but it's not COVID, I promise, even though you can't catch it through the through these virtual webinars. But so bear with me. We've done over $1.5 billion, as Lindsay stated on the opening intro, which is pretty, which I love about each engagement that we do generates over 250,000 up towards $1 million in newfound money. This is money that's at the federal level. These are federal tax programs that you can use to offset ordinary income tax. And that's really the name of the game of this presentation. For those of you that have not leveraged certain programs, this is stuff that you don't have to pay back. This is money that's typically trapped in your business and or real estate investments. There's a lot of moving parts over the last couple of years. A lot has changed in the tax code. And I'll touch on certain things that I think what's going to be happening going into the future. But we always like to say documentation beats conversation. These are some of our clients that have worked with us and continue to work with us. And so what we're talking about today, as I alluded to, is hidden treasures for commercial and multifamily property investors, as well as innovative businesses nationwide. Now, there are billions of dollars set aside every 12 months, and it doesn't really matter who's in the presidency, going forward. There's always money set aside for growth and economic growth, research and development growth. And so, but what we find is about, still around 85% of the businesses out there are not leveraging these programs. And I'll get into some of the reasons why that is. So the ultimate goal is the elimination or reduction of your federal income tax. And I want to start by talking about, one of our flagship services. You may or may have not have heard of this program. There has been some significant changes to cost segregation studies, okay? And this is just a form of really advanced depreciation. Cost segregation is by far the most powerful tax strategy for increasing cash flow for real estate investors. And again, we see this as an afterthought. We don't see this as a proactive upfront way or tax planning method. Now, and again, and there's reasons for that, and we'll talk about that. I just touched on this, so I kind of jumped the gun here. 85% of property owners are still not taking full advantage of cost segregation, leaving thousands and even millions of dollars on the table each year. And why is this? So, number one, CPAs typically don't offer this service in-house. It is a highly specialized area in the tax code that requires a certain knowledge within the tax code. And then there's over 300 court cases and IRS memorandums. So there's a lot of legalities on how you can take advantage of cost segregation. And then the last piece, which is probably the bigger piece, is the engineering methods that are used and applied. And not all cost segregation studies are created equally. And the last one is the IRS simply does not do anything as far as promoting it. Therefore, a lot of the mid-market business owners out there, real estate investors, are simply just missing out on this. The cost segregation has been in the tax code since 1969. It went away in the tax reform of '86. It came back in early 2000s, and there was two major lawsuits that drove that. A Hospital Corporation of America and Walgreens sued the IRS, and the IRS actually lost in U.S. tax court, and then it came back in the early 2000s. And then the IRS finally published the technique and guidelines in 2004, and that's really become somewhat of our business Bible that we stick to, and there's some guidelines around the way we do it. That way it eliminates any audit risk. This is not considered a risky or aggressive approach. And I will just say that there's two pathways of depreciation. The current method, a lot of you are familiar with this because this is the normal CPA method across the country, is it's called the straight line method, and you're just going to take a traditional depreciation schedule over 39 years for commercial and 27.5 years for multifamily property owners. That's the normal way. You're going to write off your property over the next 27.5 or 39 years, or there's the newer method, which is under the cost segregation plan or advanced depreciation, where you can write off your building in really a big chunk of it in over 5 years. And there's been even enhancements around that. I always like to say, why would you let the IRS hold on to your money for 39 years when you can get it in today's dollars, creating massive time value of money? Okay, so as we break down buildings, the legal way we do this is that we're simply moving real property or breaking apart real property, and we're put under section 1250, and that's the normal accounting method that everyone's using today. Usually if you own a property, it's sitting in 1250 property. And the way we go about our cost segregation study is we're breaking it into personal property at a federal level under section 1245. And the IRS allows and backs the ability for a building to be broken apart in components and plucked out and moved into personal property for a shorter life, which basically generates significant upfront cash flow where the property owners can take advantage and leverage that. Okay, so a real life example would be, let's say you owned an apartment building or you bought an apartment building for $1 million, and that building would depreciate over 27.5 years, or you get to take 127.5% each year for about $27,500 that you're going to be able to write off on your taxes over the next, year one and then the next 27.5 years. And that's fine. But as we take a look at cost segregation and how that works, the same building for $1 million, you're now going to be able to write off over the first 5 years over $250,000 in today's dollars. Okay, so that's huge when you think about growing your empire, where you can get this money now and use it to buy more buildings, buy property, buy or hire employees, buy equipment, whatever you need to do. It's going to increase your ROI and your cash flow. So this chart basically represents, you can see that the blue line is more of the straight line method, and then the pink line represents you're able to take all this money in today's dollars, as I mentioned. So, all right, let's get into the meat, some of the what can actually be broken out, what types of components. Now there's many, there's hundreds and hundreds of components that can be written off when you buy a property. So let's just take a look at some of the big ones that make up a big chunk of the purchase price or the construction cost. So this works for any asset class. It works for any purchase price. So let's take a look. So electrical, wiring, the interior build outs, portions of the plumbing, fixtures, parking lots, drainage systems, landscape, swimming pools, curbs, retaining walls, and hundreds of other components when we get into the carpeting, fixtures, non-load bearing walls, drop ceilings, raised floors. And a lot of people don't know that these buildings can be written off by taking a big chunk of the depreciation in the early life. And we're going to talk about the pros and the cons and why you would not do a cost segregation. But one of the most exciting features of this is that based on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that the bonus depreciation was created. And this was a few years back, but essentially is one of the most important pieces that, you may want to jot down and take a note. Any purchase price or any building acquisition after September 27th or 2017, and this also works for new construction, after September 27th, 2017, you automatically qualify for 100% first year bonus depreciation. It really is a game changer because essentially, as I mentioned, under the original cost segregation rules, you could write off a building over 5 years, which would be all your interior improvements. Your 15-year is all your exterior improvements, land improvements. Well, now essentially it gets compressed into 1 year, therefore taking a lot of that, and a lot of your initial down payment that the bank wants when you're buying a property, you now can literally write off that cost in year one. Okay, so you're taking a much more aggressive appreciation, and you can use that again to offset your income. You can use that depreciation for other projects, other income. If you're active real estate investor, you don't have to just take the depreciation from one property and use it for that exact property. You can actually use it and leverage other income streams that you're making money on, and you can use that to offset. So it becomes, very valuable in your tax planning. Now in comes the CARES Act. This passed recently when COVID first hit, and there's something called the net operating loss rules, where you can carry back new depreciation that could be generated by, let's say, cost segregation, and you can use that as a 5-year carryback, and you can file for a refund on profitable years. And back in the day, taxes were higher, so you have a little bit of an arbitrage mechanism. Now, get with your CPA on how this could work for you, because I think we're educating people day in and day out. We do a lot of pro bono work for our clients, and we're always talking about this stuff. So make sure you're bringing it to your CPA and asking them about the 5-year carryback rule, where you can then do a tax return, you can file for a refund, and you get it in the current tax year. So we're seeing our clients are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars that they never knew existed because they paid a lot of tax in certain years. So that is a strategy that we wanted to share with you today in this presentation, because it can become extremely significant, and a lot of people miss that piece when the new CARES Act came out. Okay, so, and again, we're going to open this up, guys, for a Q&A at the end of my presentation. So please save your questions to the end, and I look forward to diving into those. And so I like to say, show me the money. Just the really bottom line, all this, and this is really powerful. So I will say that for every $1 million in acquisition or construction cost, a cost segregation study generates approximately $200,000 to $250,000 actually in bottom line savings. So again, if you're doing a $5 million project, a $10 million acquisition or new construction project, you now can just do the math on this formula. For every $1 million generates about $200,000 to $250,000 in additional cash flow. So what's really cool about this, I want to just share with you a little bit of a caveat. As a part of cost seg rules, cost segregation rules is that you can go back in time. The IRS literally lets us go back 20 years. We can go back. So if you've owned properties, let's say for 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, you've never done an engineering-based cost segregation study on any of your properties, you're allowed to go back, like I said, about 20 years. And we file what's called a 481 change in accounting. We do all this work behind the scenes. We work directly with your CPA. And the IRS will allow a one-time consent to pick up all this missed depreciation, and it has a 20-year carry forward. And we do not have to amend any returns. So when people hear that, they're like, holy crap. So you telling me I can go back? I do not have to file amended returns to get this missed money? And the answer to that is yes, we do this day in and day out. And this is not considered aggressive. This does not trigger, an audit. Matter of fact, it's written into the code as it stands today. Okay, so let's get into what qualifies. So any purchase price or construction cost over $500,000. So $500,000 is really the floor, the minimum, and then up to, it could be tens of millions of dollars. We're doing projects that are 40 million, 50 million, $100 million. They're hiring us to come in and do this particular work. It qualifies for new construction, major renovations, leasehold improvements, and really any property class qualifies. We do a lot of multifamily, a lot of storage, a lot of industrial, manufacturing, office, commercial, auto dealerships, and so on and so forth. All right, so what info do we need to take a look at your property to see if, in fact, you might be missing out on a boatload of money? Number one, we have the ability. We built a cost segregation estimating tool where we punch in certain data, and it actually spits out a 12-page report. And we do this complimentary for our clients. Excuse me, and it will show you exactly what you've been missing out on, or going forward, what you qualify for. So we just simply need the type of building, as I just mentioned on the last slide. What type of building is it? We want to know the purchase price or construction cost. We want to know the date of occupancy. Okay, so basically when you bought it. And then what renovation costs are you going to be putting in or have already put in? So, don't forget, we can go back in time so you don't miss out on not $1 with this program. So I'm going to go through this really quick, this next slide, just so for those people that want to know the engineering process. So if you in fact qualify, we put together an engagement letter. We kick off the project with your CPA, make sure everybody's on board. There's certain documents that we collect. It could be a site plan, could be a rent roll, could be a depreciation schedule. The more information, the better. We then send out an engineer to the building to perform an on-site inspection. We have the ability to do it virtual due to COVID. We calculate the numbers. We actually assemble the report. We send you out the executive summary, and then we do a wrap-up call with you and your CPA, and we just kind of go over the numbers, and then we send you the final deliverable. So very cool. All right, so let's get into the proper planning that can save you thousands. And I want to talk about today, 2020. You may right now be sitting with your CPA going, hey, we had a pretty good year, or we didn't have such a great year. So either, whatever side of the coin you're on, there could be some great opportunity for you, but I will say it takes planning. Now, CPAs don't do this type of work in-house, and therefore, we or another cost segregation firm, partner with CPAs all across the country to work with them very tandem and very seamlessly to incorporate these tax incentives. Okay, so as I mentioned, and I'm recapping a little bit, we want to take a look at the first year bonus depreciation. Again, any property built or purchased after September 27, 2017 you definitely want to see if you qualify for bonus depreciation or missed out bonus depreciation because you haven't done this yet. We also want to look at your renovations. We call these qualified improvement property. There's a certain way that the IRS wants us to book your renovation cost on properties. We also want to look at your net operating losses, or you can get with us, you can get with your CPA that can carry back for 5 years. You can file for refunds. Now, if you're selling a building, we can work with you on 1031 exchanges and opportunity zones, which is very key. And I will tell you, cost segregation studies go hand in glove with both of those, okay? And again, it's just tax planning, tax planning, tax planning makes the magic happen. Now, we also take a look at property tax mitigation, both on real and personal property. I'm not going to go too deep into these other areas as we sit on the call today. Now, there's another, so if you've owned properties, for those of you that have owned real estate, something that came out about 5 years ago, and it's called repair and maintenance. And what it does is it looks through, it's the ability to kind of see what you've been writing off and what you've been capitalizing. And some of the stuff that you've been capitalizing long-term, and let's say in a 39-year asset, might be considered a repair and not an improvement. And therefore, we can help you line by line, make sure that all of your assets and all of your purchases and renovations and repairs on the building are in the right buckets. Because if they're not, we can file, again, a 481 adjustment. There's no amended tax returns needed. And that could kick out hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional tax savings for you and your partners. And that I will just say this is being missed quite often. Let me bring your attention to a couple federal energy programs. So for those of you that own properties that have put in LED lighting, let's say, or you've replaced your HVAC units, or you've got energy efficient doors, windows, roof, those kinds of things under Section 179D, you can actually get an additional 60 cents to $1.80 a square foot. Now that is set to expire right now, but we can go retroactive for probably the last, well, since 2006. We can go back to 2006 and look at any cost that you may have done that could pick up this additional tax benefit. For those of you that are doing new construction around either single family development, multifamily, or senior living, and if it's, let's say it's either a major rehab on a building or it's new construction, you can qualify for 45L. You might just want to jot these down. And it's an energy incentive where the IRS will give you $2,000 per unit in a tax credit. We just finished one up for a 600 unit apartment complex. And actually it was 3 complexes, 3 different properties that somebody owned. And we got them over $1 million in dollar for dollar tax credit with a 20-year carry forward. And they had no idea that this program existed. So again,
hey Terry, sorry we lost you again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Maybe I sat back off my mic. Okay, so what part did you not hear? I can recap.
I would say the last 30 seconds.
Okay. So 179D energy study, I'll just recap real quick. If you've put any energy efficiency into your building, you may qualify for 60 cents to $1.80 a square foot in the form of a tax incentive. And then the one I want to touch on right now is the 45L tax credits, where if you've constructed let's say, you've constructed an apartment building, or you've done a major rehab to a apartment building, a senior living facility, or you've developed let's say a single family residential area, you're a home developer, if that qualifies for you. You can qualify for a $2,000 tax credit per unit. And like I just mentioned, we just finished up about a 600-unit apartment complex, and we got our client over $1 million in a dollar-for-dollar credit, which is very powerful. I'm just checking right now, Lindsay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so for those of you that own businesses, you're running and developing or you run a manufacturing company, doing any type of innovation, you're involved in technology, maybe your business is involved around software, and you're doing anything unique or innovative, you can actually qualify for the research credits, which again are dollar-for-dollar tax credits. So if you've owned a company, you've never taken advantage of the research credits, and you're involved in anything that's unique to your business, which could be software, design, engineering, life sciences, it could be anything around construction, it could be energy efficiency. If you're designing or improving or innovating, you may qualify for the research credits, which can be very, very lucrative. And it's a percentage of the payroll that you get a credit for each and every year. And the IRS will let us go back 3 years to pick this up. So if you've never had it done, it could be, we're seeing, hundreds of thousands of dollars in either a refund with interest, or going forward, it's a dollar-for-dollar credit each and every year. So just FYI on that, you may be aware of this, you may not be. Again, CPAs do not typically do this service in-house, and they outsource all of these specialty tax incentives to a company such as CORE that has the capabilities with the engineering, the tax, and the legal. These studies can be somewhat complex, and it has to be, all the T's and it has to be crossed and all the I's have to be dotted. And if you are and there's also hiring tax credits if you're hiring employees back to work, and you can get anywhere from $2,000 to $9,000 per employee, which can be very, very lucrative. And I think it's very, very timely as people are getting back to work. So if you have never taken advantage of what's called WOTC, Work Opportunity Tax Credits, might be a good time to take a look at that as well. So moral of the story is you need a partner that can help you walk through the layers, it really is, the layers and layers of tax incentives and how to qualify and monetize them. Okay, so I'm just these are some of the most commonly asked questions. I'm gonna run through these really quick. Maybe these will jog some additional questions, but this is probably some of the major questions. Maybe I shouldn't be touching on this because I love it being interactive with everybody listening. So hopefully you'll still have some questions. So when would you not do a cost segregation study? And my answer to that, and I tell my clients, if you're going to sell the building within 3 to 5 years of when you bought it, then that does not make sense, because the IRS is going to want something, or they're going to want that money back, and it's called recapture. So as long as you're going to hold the property over 3 years, then it makes sense to investigate having a cost segregation study done. Okay, so how much, and the other reason why is if the building is not profitable, right? So if you bought a building, there's no tenants in it yet, it's going through renovation, maybe you don't even have a real date of occupancy, you don't need the write-off because there's no income being generated. That would be that's the only other reason why you would not want to consider doing a cost segregation study, because you're just leaving money on the table. How much does a study typically cost? It's about a 20 to 1 ROI. So if we, again, if we get you a couple $100 grand, and our fees may be around 10 grand, and don't hold me to that because there's variables, but just to give you an idea of how affordable this is and the kind of returns that this strategy can bring you. Will this trigger an audit? No, it does not. Matter of fact, the IRS looks at this as a very legitimate way to write off your asset, as long as it's done according to the IRS specs. And we follow that, like I said, we follow it to the T. What happens when you sell your property? Well, that one is a little bit more of a loaded question. Again, as long as you hold your property from 3 to 5 years and longer, you're not going to have an issue with what's called recapture. Okay, so what if I purchased a property using a 1031 exchange? No problem. All we do is adjust the basis from what you rolled into the new property. And like I said, it goes hand in glove. So those are two powerful strategies. Can I use the depreciation from my property to offset other income? And the answer, as long as you're considered an active investor, the answer is yes. So, Lindsay, with that, I kind of went through this maybe a little faster, but I definitely wanted to have some time to open it up to everybody, and love to take some questions. And on the slide here is my contact information. And I'd love to dig into, I know we have some time to get into some of these other areas.
Thank you so much, Terry. And yes, to all of our attendees, Q&A time. So again, please using your questions chat option to send over any questions that you have so we can go ahead and answer them. There's no questions quite yet, Terry, so if there's anything else that you would like to add while we wait a few minutes to see if they come through, that's fine as well.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, I'm either confused everybody or I did such a phenomenal job explaining. But come on, there's got to be at least one question. But if not, that's okay too. Trying to think what else I can kind of add to the talks. Guys, we do a lot of pro bono work, so if any of this resonates, or your uncle has a property, or you're not real sure how this could work for you, reach out to us. And again, we do a complimentary consultation with you and just really answer any questions, and then put together a custom savings analysis for whatever scenario you may, this may benefit you. If it's on the R&D, research and development tax credits, if it's on the energy efficiency tax credits, or if it's on the commercial real estate tax incentives, we'll walk you through it. I think we'll have this is recorded, so we can also send out, you can send this to your CPA if need be. And correct, Lindsay?
Yes, myself or my colleague Audra will be following up with everyone individually, personally. So since there's no questions now, if there are questions later, we can definitely get you in direct contact with Terry. The webinar has been recorded, so we can also send everyone a copy of that as well. So.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, Terry, maybe we sign off for now and we can follow up with everyone after the webinar.
Yep. Sounds great. I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a great day.
Bye-bye.